Nadia woke to the sound of chickens scratching outside and the distant murmur of the village already awake. The sunlight filtered gently through the raffia blinds, painting thin golden lines across her face. She blinked slowly, once, twice, her mind sinking into a strange emptiness. There was a bed beneath her, a woven mat beside it, a clay water pot by the wall, all familiar things. Yet somehow nothing felt familiar at all. Her breath trembled as she sat up. Who am I? The question fluttered through her mind like a trapped bird. She knew her name, Nadia, it echoed inside her like a distant sound. She knew she was 24 because someone had told her recently. But everything else felt scattered, as if her memories had been thrown into the wind and only a few pieces had landed back. Voices drifted from outside the hut. Low voices. Whispering voices. The kind of whispers meant to avoid being heard. Nadia rose unsteadily and stepped into the morning light. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of burning firewood and damp earth. A few villagers carrying water pots glanced in her direction, then quickly looked away. Another woman, sweeping her doorway, froze at the sight of Nadia and hurried back inside, shutting the wooden door without a word. A little boy who had been playing with a carved wooden toy smiled when he saw her, until his mother snatched his arm and pulled him away, whispering sharply into his ear. The boy stopped smiling. Everywhere Nadia looked, eyes avoided her. Body shifted away. Footsteps quickened. A fear she didn't understand pressed against her chest. What did I do? Why do they look at me like that? She moved toward the main hut where her family lived. The compound felt too quiet, as if everyone was holding their breath. Her feet barely made sound on the dusty ground. The old mango tree in the center cast a long, crooked shadow, one that stretched toward her like an accusing finger. Her stepmother, Ayabo, was kneeling near a clay hearth, blowing softly on dying embers. When she heard Nadia's footsteps, she stiffened before turning around slowly. Her face was calm, too calm, like a mask that had been worn for too long. "You're awake," Ayabo said softly, her voice tight. "You shouldn't be walking around yet." Nadia swallowed. "I don't remember things," she whispered. "Everything feels strange." For a moment, Ayabo's eyes flickered with something, fear or anger or maybe both. She stood up, wiping her hands on her wrapper, and approached Nadia with forced gentleness. She reached out and touched Nadia's cheek. Her hand was cold. "My child," she murmured, leaning close enough that her breath brushed Nadia's ear. "Listen to me carefully. Forget what you saw, forget who you were. It is better this way." A shiver ran through Nadia's spine. "What did I see?" Ayabo's grip tightened on her shoulders. "Nothing you should ever remember." Nadia felt the words sink into her skin like needles. "Forget. Forget. Forget." The command echoed like a drumbeat inside her skull. But beneath that heavy beat, something else stirred, something small but stubborn, like a coal glowing under ashes. A feeling. A sensation. A whisper of something once known. Images flashed, too quick to understand. A drum circle. A girl laughing. The smell of palm wine. Someone crying in the dark. Then all of it vanished before she could grasp it. Nadia inhaled sharply. "I don't want to forget. Something feels wrong." Ayabo's expression darkened for a brief second. Then she forced a smile. "Your mind is confused, that is all. Rest. Do not ask questions." But Nadia had already turned away, her heart pounding with a strange certainty. Something inside her refused to obey. Something inside her refused to forget. And whatever that something was, it was waking up. Nadia spent the rest of the morning sitting beneath the old mango tree, her fingers digging absently into the soft soil. The compound buzzed quietly around her, but everything felt distant, like she was watching life happen through a fogged window. Each passing minute brought a new flicker of unease. Something sat heavy beneath her thoughts, pressing, pushing, demanding to surface. She tried to distract herself by watching the chickens peck at grain scattered near the hut, but even their movements felt unreal. When she closed her eyes, strange shapes and colors moved behind her eyelids, too familiar to be random, too fragmented to be comforting. A sudden smell drifted across the yard. Smoke. What? And something sweeter, burned herbs. The moment the scent touched her, a sharp flash of imagery pierced her skull. A circle of people dancing. Hands beating on drums. A girl, laughing, spinning, wearing beads that clinked softly. Then, darkness swallowing the light. A scream. Blood on the ground. Her eyes snapped open with a gasp. The world blurred, tilting for a heartbeat. Her breath came fast and shallow. The memory had felt too real, too close, as if it had been plucked out of her mind with force. She pressed her fingers against her temples. What was that? Before she could steady herself, her stepbrother, Obina, walked out of the main hut carrying a basket of kola nuts. The moment his gaze fell on her, his entire body froze. His eyes widened, not in surprise but fear. Fear so raw it made Nadia's stomach twist. "What is it?" she asked, rising slowly. He stepped back, gripping the basket so tightly the woven fibers creaked. "Did you remember something?" His voice trembled. His forehead glistened. His legs shifted as though ready to run. Nadia frowned. "Just a smell. And some images." What's wrong?" Obina swallowed hard, the sound loud in the quiet compound. "Don't think too much. Don't try to remember." He looked around cautiously, then lowered his voice. "If you value your life, just forget." A chill crawled up her spine. "Why are you all saying that?" Before he could reply, Ayabo's voice rang sharply from inside the hut. "Obina, leave her be." Obina flinched, dropped his gaze, and hurried away without another word. The kola nuts rattled with each shaky step. Nadia stood rooted in place, gripping her arms against her chest. The fear in Obina's eyes hadn't been for himself. It had been for what she might discover. For what she might remember. Another flash hit her, quicker this time. The same laughing girl. A clay pot falling. A hand grabbing her wrist, hard. Her own voice screaming a name she couldn't recall. She staggered back, breath trembling. Each memory flicker sharpened something in the air around her. Villagers passing by paused and glanced toward the compound with dread, as if sensing a storm gathering. Nadia closed her eyes again. The images so far had been faint, broken, unclear. But one thing became certain now. Whatever she had seen. Whatever she had forgotten. Her memories scared them more than she did. And the more she remembered, the more their fear grew. That afternoon, the sky hung heavy with clouds, casting the village in a muted gray. Nadia walked slowly toward the back of the compound, hoping the quiet might loosen the haze in her mind. She passed the storage hut, the grinding stone, the patch of earth where the family once planted yams, everything familiar, yet everything unsettling. Her feet stopped at the old wooden bench near the fence. She wasn't sure why, but something about this place pulled at her. She sat, closing her eyes again, letting the silence sink into her. The wind brushed lightly against her skin, tugging memories with it. Then, like a whisper sliding through her skull, a soft giggle echoed in her mind. Nadia's eyes flew open. A giggle. A girl's giggle. Her heart stumbled. She knew that sound. She pressed her fingers into the bench, the wood rough beneath her palms. The giggle came again, this time louder, trailing with the musical rhythm of woven bead bracelets. A vision burst through her mind so vividly she almost cried out. A girl about her age, dark-skinned, slender, with bright eyes and a smile that could charm the rain itself. She wore red and brown beads around her ankles, and the sun seemed to follow her wherever she moved. Nadia felt warmth rise in her chest. She knew this girl. She didn't know how. She didn't know from where. But she knew her, deeply, painfully. A sudden wave of sadness gripped her, followed by confusion. Why did remembering this girl hurt so much? Before she could sort through the feeling, the compound's gate creaked. Nadia turned to see her stepfather, Ghanian, entering with a sack slung over his shoulder. The moment he saw her sitting there, on the old wooden bench, his eyes darkened. "You shouldn't sit there," he said quietly. Nadia blinked. "What? What's wrong with this place?" Ghanian avoided her gaze. He dropped the sack near the storage hut and brushed the dirt from his hands. "That bench, it belonged to someone who is no longer here." His voice cracked just slightly. Nadia felt a shard of memory stab her mind. The girl. The bench. Two people laughing, sharing roasted maize, whispering secrets. Who was she? Nadia asked, her voice barely stable. Ghanian stiffened. "No one you need to remember." Nadia swallowed. "But I do remember. A little. She was happy. She." "Stop." Ghanian's tone turned sharp, almost panicked. "Do not speak of her. Not to me. Not to anyone." Nadia stared at him, stunned. "What? What happened to her?" For a moment Ghanian's face softened with something like guilt, or fear. Then it hardened again. "She vanished." The final word felt too heavy, too final, too rehearsed. "How?" Nadia demanded. "She left the village one night," he said without meeting her eyes. "And never returned. That is all." Nadia shook her head. The images in her mind didn't match his story. They weren't of someone leaving happily or quietly. They were filled with sudden darkness, a loud argument, something breaking, and her chest tightened. She couldn't see beyond that. but the sensation of terror remained. "Her name," Nadia whispered, her voice trembling. "Tell me her name." Ikin's jaw clenched. Names have power. Let dead memories stay dead. But Nadia was no longer listening. Because at that moment, another memory flickered, clearer than any before. The girl leaned close to her, smiling wide, their foreheads touching as she whispered, "Sister." Nadia's breath caught. Her hands began to shake. Sister. The vanished girl was not a stranger. She was blood. Family. Someone they expected her to forget. Her stepfather's eyes widened as he saw the realization forming in Nadia's expression. You remembered something," he whispered, voice breaking. Nadia stood slowly. Who was she to me? Ikin stepped back as though struck. "Nadia, please, don't do this." But it was too late. The memory had cracked open. And now the truth, whatever it was clawing its way out of the darkness. Night fell heavy over the compound, and the village settled into the quiet rhythm of crickets and distant dogs. Nadia remained awake, lying on the woven mat in her room, eyes wide, heart still racing from the revelation of her sister. The shadows cast by the flickering lanterns outside seemed longer tonight, stretching and twisting like fingers reaching for her. She forced herself to breathe, telling herself the day's memories had been too much. Yet every time she closed her eyes, faint shapes moved at the edge of her vision. Shadows that weren't quite her own, shifting just beyond the lamplight. She tried to convince herself it was fatigue, imagination, or the lingering effects of a childhood she couldn't recall fully. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Who's there?" she called softly. No answer. Only the faint scuff of feet retreating. She got up, her bare feet silent on the cool earth floor. As she reached the doorway, the shadows in the courtyard seemed to pulse. A faint rustling came from the mango tree, though no wind stirred. Nadia's gaze fell on the courtyard where the compound's fire pit had been doused hours ago. There, just beyond the circle of light, the darkness shifted unnaturally. It looked like someone crouched there, hunched over, watching. She blinked. Nothing. Another whisper slipped through the silence, soft and almost musical. "Do you remember?" Nadia froze. Her pulse thundering in her ears. That voice, she had heard it before. It was like a memory bleeding into reality, not coming from anyone she could see. Her stepmother Ayabo's warning echoed in her mind, "Forget, forget." But the whisper wasn't her mother's. This was something older, something sharper. It belonged neither to the living nor the dead, yet it was undeniably familiar. Nadia stepped outside, lantern in hand. The courtyard was empty, bathed in silver moonlight. Every hut stood silent, doors closed, windows shuttered. The air felt thick, almost alive. Another whisper. "You cannot hide from what you know." Her heart clenched. Her thoughts spun, and she felt a wave of images surge. Her sister's laughter, the vanished night, hands pulling, shadows moving. The whispers grew louder, weaving into the rhythm of her memories, amplifying each fragment she recalled. A shadow detached itself from the mango tree. It was tall, elongated, stretching unnaturally toward her. Its form wasn't human but carried the weight of memory. Wherever Nadia's thoughts traveled, the shadows seemed to follow, bending the moonlight in strange patterns. She stepped back. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the whisper again, now clear. "Remember?" Nadia realized with a sudden chill that every memory she had recovered was no longer just inside her. Each recollection made the shadows stronger, more tangible. Each fragment of the past she tried to grasp seemed to pulse in the courtyard, stretching the darkness, making it alive. Her hands trembled. I can't stop remembering," she admitted aloud. The shadows quivered as if responding to her confession. And in that moment, Nadia understood something terrifying. Her memories were no longer hers alone. They were weapons. And the compound, the very home that sought to erase her past, was beginning to tremble under their weight. She clutched her chest. The whispers coiled around her mind, urging her forward, daring her to remember more. And Nadia realized, the shadows were not threats, they were guides. Guides to the truth she had been forced to forget. A storm of memory was coming. And the family that tried to bury the past was already shaking in its first tremors. The next morning, the compound seemed different, sharper, quieter, almost tense, as if it had been holding its breath all night. Nadia woke with her head pounding from the previous night's visions, her mind spinning with fragments of laughter, screams, and whispered names she could not yet fully piece together. But even as confusion gripped her, a stubborn determination simmered beneath it all. She would remember. She had no choice. She stepped outside and immediately noticed the strange atmosphere. Her stepbrother Obina's face was pale, his hands shaking as he carried a basket of cassava. Her stepfather Ikin avoided her gaze entirely, muttering under his breath as he busied himself with chores. Even Ayabo, her stepmother, had stopped pretending calm. Her eyes darted nervously whenever Nadia moved, her lips pressed into a thin, anxious line. It began subtly. Nadia recalled a memory from her childhood, a simple one at first. She had been hiding behind the mango tree, laughing with her sister as they played a secret game of chasing fireflies. The image appeared clear, warm, alive. Across the yard, Ayabo froze mid-step, her hand clutching a bundle of dried herbs. Her lips parted slightly and a tremor ran down her spine. Ikin, who had been chopping yams, dropped the knife with a loud clatter. Obina stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the mud path. Nadia blinked, startled. What's wrong?" she asked softly. Ayabo's voice quivered, barely audible. Don't remember that." Nadia frowned. "What? It's just a memory. A game we played as children." But the reaction was undeniable. Every time she recalled another detail, a joke shared, a secret promise, a whispered plan, the household seemed to convulse with discomfort. A cup fell from the counter. A pot cracked on the ground. Obina's knees buckled as if the memory had hit him physically. It was then Nadia realized something profound and terrifying. Her memories weren't just hers. They had become more than images in her mind. They carried weight, presence, even power. Each recollection inflicted pain, fear, or confusion upon those who had tried to bury it. She pressed her hands to her temples, images flashing faster now. Her sister, the vanishing girl, dancing under the moonlight. Laughter echoing in the compound. The night someone tried to silence her with threats, a harsh hand on her shoulder, a voice demanding she forget. The details came faster, sharper, more vivid. Her stepmother clutched her chest, gasping for breath. Ikin's face drained of color. Obina collapsed entirely, shaking uncontrollably on the ground. Nadia staggered back in shock, not understanding at first that it was her memories causing the chaos. I didn't mean," she began, but the realization struck her fully. Every memory she retrieved hurt them. Every fragment she remembered was their punishment. Her lips curved into a faint, determined smile. They had told her to forget. They had tried to erase her past. But the past remembered itself. It could not be hidden, and now it was turning against those who had buried it. Nadia straightened, inhaling sharply. She would continue to remember. She would let every stolen secret, every hidden crime, and every suppressed memory surface. Because for those who had silenced her, every memory she reclaimed would become a nightmare. And Nadia had only just begun. By the next evening, Nadia's strength was waning, not from physical exhaustion, but from the unrelenting storm of memories pressing against her mind. The compound, too, had grown restless. Doors banged shut on their own. Pots rattled. Even the wind seemed to whisper warnings. She needed answers, guidance, someone who could explain the power she now carried. She wandered toward the edge of the village, where the old river twisted through the fields. The path was narrow, lined with thick bushes, and a strange stillness clung to it. As she walked, fragments of memory swirled in her mind. The vanished girl, the forbidden rituals, the laughter and screams intertwined. At the riverbank, an old woman sat beneath a massive baobab tree, weaving palm fronds into a mat. Her hair was white as smoke, braided intricately and adorned with tiny shells that clinked softly with each movement. Her eyes, sharp and luminous, seemed to pierce through Nadia before she even spoke. "You walk heavy with memory, child," the woman said without looking up. Her voice was low but carried a weight that made the air itself tremble. Nadia paused. I don't understand. Something is happening to me. My memories, they're alive. They hurt them. They scare them. I don't know why." The woman nodded slowly. "I have seen this before, though rarely. What you carry is more than memory. It is truth. And those who sought to bury it, they have awakened the fire within you." Nadia shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't understand. How can my memories do this? How can they hurt people?" The elder reached into her bag, pulling out a small gourd filled with powdered herbs. She sprinkled a few over the river water, which immediately shimmered with a faint light. Because your mind was stolen once. Someone tried to bind your memory, erase your history, and in doing so, they left a fragment of your spirit tethered to the past. That fragment now awakens as you remember. Nadia's eyes widened. They stole my memory? Who would do that? Why? The old woman's gaze softened. Those who fear the truth fear you. They cannot bear the weight of their own crimes being remembered. Your sister, your family, their hands are stained. But the spirit within you, it resists forgetting. That is why you feel what they fear. That is why your memories have become a weapon. A cold shiver ran down Nadia's spine. She had always known something was wrong even when she could not name it. Now, pieces fell into place, each memory a puzzle forming a dangerous, beautiful picture. Can I control it? Nadia whispered. Can I make them stop hurting? Or, she trailed off, unsure whether to finish her thought. The elders smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and warning. Child, control comes not from fear or hesitation. It comes from embracing the truth fully. Remember everything. Do not fear the fragments, they are your allies. Every scream, every shadow, every heartbeat that trembles at your recollection, it is proof that your memory is alive, and that it will protect what is rightfully yours. Nadia took a deep breath, letting the words sink. The river murmured at her feet, carrying a strange comfort. The power she had feared was not a curse, but a key, one she had only begun to understand. She looked up at the old woman. Then I will remember. Every piece, every secret, every night they tried to erase. The elder's eyes gleamed. Good. Because only through remembering will you survive, and only through remembering will they face what they tried to hide. For the first time since awakening, Nadia felt clarity. The storm within her mind had a purpose, and she was ready to step into it. The night descended like a heavy curtain, blanketing the village in darkness. Nadia returned to the compound, her steps deliberate, her mind sharpened by the elder's words. She had always feared her memories, but now she understood, they were more than visions. They were weapons, shields, and keys all at once. She sat on the old wooden bench beneath the mango tree, closing her eyes. The air around her seemed to hum, alive with anticipation. Slowly, carefully, she reached into the corners of her mind where the memories had been buried. At first, she touched only fragments, the giggle of her sister, the warmth of sunlight on their skins, the faint smell of roasted maize in the yard. But soon more painful memories emerged, each one sharper, clearer, heavier. It began with the vanished girl, her sister, the one the family had forced Nadia to forget. She remembered the night with absolute clarity, the laughter in the courtyard, their secret whispers, the playful chase around the fire pit. Then came the sudden tension, the hand gripping her shoulder, the voice commanding silence. The laughter stopped abruptly. Darkness fell. Screams tore through the night. She could feel the fear, the anger, the desperation. The memory had not been just seen, it had been lived. Nadia saw them clearly now, her stepmother Ayabo, her stepfather Ikin, and even Obina. They had gathered under the moonlight, chanting in a language she had only half remembered from childhood, words heavy with power and warning. The ritual they performed had not been simple. This was no ordinary family dispute. They sought to erase her memories, to erase the truth. And in their desperation they had targeted her sister first. The child's spirit had been bound, locked away, made to vanish from the world. Nadia's own mind had been tampered with, memories snatched and hidden deep, leaving gaps that confused and weakened her. But they underestimated her resilience. They underestimated the strength of the blood that ran through her veins and the spirit that refused to bow. The images came faster now, more vivid, more painful. She saw her sister's pleading eyes, her own fear, the cold indifference in Obina's expression, the rigid calm of Ayabo masking terror. And then, the final act, the night the girl disappeared entirely. A door slammed. A cloth over a face. Silence. Shadows stretching and consuming. And then, emptiness. Nadia's chest tightened and tears streaked down her cheeks. She had never been allowed to grieve, never allowed to remember. Her sister's absence had been framed as natural, a departure, a leaving. But now she saw it for what it truly was, betrayal, fear, and violence disguised as family duty. Her hands trembled as the memories coalesced, and she realized something terrifying and beautiful. Each detail she remembered, each fragment she reclaimed, was not just a memory. It was a spark of retribution, a tremor in the lives of those who had hidden the truth. The same fear that had once driven her family to silence her sister now began to haunt them in her consciousness. Her stepmother Ayabo's warning echoed in her mind, "Forget, forget." Nadia shook her head fiercely. No, she would not. Forgetting had brought only pain and deception. Remembering would bring justice. With each memory she summoned, she felt her sister's presence with her, not as a ghost but as a guiding force. A voice in the darkness whispered, gentle but firm, "Remember, Nadia. Remember it all. Let them face what they hid." Nadia's lips curved into a determined smile. The power of her mind, long suppressed, surged through her. The ritual that had once sought to weaken her had only made her stronger. She had been trained in suffering, forged in loss, and now, armed with memory, she was ready. The compound, the village, the very air around her seemed to hold its breath. Whatever came next would not be quiet. Her sister's truth was returning. And Nadia was the storm. The next morning, Nadia awoke to a stillness that felt unnatural. The compound seemed almost frozen in time, the air thick, heavy with expectation. She rose, her heart steady with a strange courage, and stepped outside. Every corner of the yard seemed sharper, alive, as if aware of her presence. Her memories had grown stronger overnight. Each fragment she recalled now carried a weight she could feel in her chest. The laughter, the fear, the stolen moments of her childhood, they were no longer confined to her mind. Something had changed. The memories had begun to manifest. It started subtly. A calabash rolled across the floor by itself. A chair tilted on its own, then righted itself with a soft thud. Shadows twisted unnaturally beneath the mango tree, elongating and shrinking as if breathing. Nadia froze, but her mind was calm. She had expected this. Slowly she let herself remember. She recalled the night her sister had vanished, the circle of chanting, the terror in her sister's eyes, the hands that had tried to silence them. She spoke aloud, softly, almost whispering the words of the memory. Immediately the courtyard reacted. The shadows stretched taller, coiling around the pillars of the house like living smoke. A soft wind rose, though the morning was still. Pots rattled on their own. The ground vibrated subtly beneath her bare feet. Each recollection was no longer just a memory, it was becoming a spirit, a presence, a force that could not be ignored. Nadia's stepmother Ayabo stepped outside, carrying a basket of herbs. Her eyes widened at the unnatural happenings. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest, whispering hurried prayers. Ikin and Obina emerged, faces pale, their movements frantic. They shouted, scolded, tried to regain control, but the spirits of Nadia's memories did not heed them. With each memory Nadia summoned, the phenomena intensified. She recalled the game she and her sister had played, spinning and laughing beneath the stars. A faint, musical echo of laughter responded, curling around the compound like smoke. She remembered the stolen cries of the night her sister had disappeared. That scream now reverberated in the air, a ghostly lament that pressed on the hearts of those who had caused it. Nadia realized something profound. These spirits were fragments of truth made manifest. They were no longer passive echoes. They were active, seeking justice, demanding acknowledgement. The compound, which had been a place of secrecy and suppression, had become a theater where hidden truths could no longer remain buried. Yet the spirits were not hostile toward her. They were guides, allies. They moved at the edges of her vision, weaving through the air with fluidity. Shadows bent to their will, light flickered to reveal what had been hidden, and the wind carried whispers of names, dates, and deeds long concealed. Nadia took a deep breath. Her memories had once been suppressed, stolen, fragmented. Now they were alive, entwined with the very essence of the house. She understood their power and she embraced it fully. From that moment she was no longer a passive vessel. She was a conductor, summoning the spirits of memory to reclaim the truth. Every object that rattled, every shadow that moved, every whisper that filled the compound was proof that the past could not remain silent. Her stepmother shrieked, her voice cracking in terror, and Obina stumbled back, clutching his face. But Nadia's gaze was steady, calm, unwavering. The memories had chosen her as their keeper, and through her, they would speak. The house trembled, the winds whispered, and Nadia smiled. She understood now. Her memories were no longer hers alone. They were her sister's voice. They were her ancestors' judgment. They were the truth rising. And the family that had tried to bury the past would feel every bit of it. By midday, the compound had transformed from a quiet home into a place of unease and tension. Nadia moved through it with a newfound calm, though the air around her seemed electric, charged with the spirits of her memories. Every footstep she took resonated with the whispers and shadows that now accompanied her. The family could feel it. They had tried to silence her, to erase the past, but they were powerless against the truth she carried. Ayabo, her stepmother, paced nervously near the hearth, wringing her hands. Every glance Nadia cast toward her made Ayabo shrink back, as if expecting the walls themselves to rise against her. She muttered prayers under her breath, beads clutched tightly in trembling fingers. Her calm mask had shattered, leaving fear exposed like a wound. Ikin, her stepfather, attempted to work in the small courtyard garden, chopping yams and tending the soil. But each swing of his knife was erratic, each movement disrupted by the tremors that seemed to ripple through the ground when Nadia recalled a memory. His face was pale, his hands shaking. He avoided looking at Nadia directly, eyes darting nervously as if her very gaze could expose the crimes he had buried. Obina, her stepbrother, could barely stand. He had tried to flee at dawn, but the shadows followed him, whispering every secret he had hoped would remain hidden. He stumbled across the compound, muttering, clutching at his temples, and backing away whenever a fragment of Nadia's memory manifested. Nadia's lips curled into a faint, cold smile. She had tried at first to be cautious, testing the power of what she now knew. But caution was no longer necessary. She remembered the night her sister had vanished, the hidden rituals, the silences, and the lies. And now the family was reaping the consequences. She began aloud, recalling the small, stolen moments of her childhood that had been stripped from her. Games in the yard, laughter shared under the mango tree, secret lessons taught by her sister. Each recollection caused a ripple of unease. The kitchen pots rattled violently, clay jars toppled, and the shadows in the corners of the compound swelled, bending the light unnaturally. Ayabo screamed, clutching at her chest, and stumbled backward. Nadia's memory shifted to darker moments. The night of the vanished girl, the ritual that had tried to erase her mind, the harsh hands and hushed voices that had silenced her sister. She spoke the details carefully, deliberately. The shadows writhed, curling around the family, and the air grew heavy with tension. Ikin froze mid-step, Obina fell to his knees, and Ayabo's voice cracked in terror as she tried to pray. The family faltered, no longer able to deny what they had done. Their carefully maintained facade of control and normalcy had collapsed under the weight of Nadia's remembering. Each secret, each act of betrayal, each hidden cruelty now pressed upon them with a tangible force. Nadia's voice was steady, calm, resolute. She did not need to yell. She did not need to strike. The memories themselves did the work. "You thought you could bury the truth," she said softly, letting the words carry across the trembling courtyard. "You thought I would forget. But I remember everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every crime you hoped would vanish with time." Ayabo sank to the floor, gasping. Ikin's knees buckled. Obina's body shook uncontrollably. Nadia stepped closer, eyes blazing with a quiet fire. The house was no longer theirs to command. The past, once buried, had returned. And the family that had sought to erase her sister, erase her, and erase the truth, was now powerless beneath the weight of their own actions. Nadia inhaled deeply, letting the silence stretch. The storm of memories had begun its reckoning. And there was no escape for those who had caused it. Night fell again, heavier than before, draping the village in an almost suffocating darkness. The air around Nadia's compound seemed charged, trembling with anticipation. She sat beneath the mango tree, knees drawn to her chest, eyes closed, letting the memories flow freely now. There was no fear, only resolve. She had learned that each recollection, each fragment of the past she had claimed, carried power. And tonight she intended to remember everything. No fragments held back. No gaps left unclaimed. It started with the lighter memories, the ones she had cherished as a child. Laughter in the courtyard, stolen games, whispers under the stars. Each memory sent a ripple through the compound. The shadows lengthened and twisted. The wind stirred without reason, and the walls themselves seemed to sigh. Then she dove into the painful ones. The night her sister vanished. The hidden ritual. The harsh hands that sought to silence her. The words that were never meant to be spoken aloud but lingered in her mind, crying to be remembered. Nadia felt her heart pound. Every detail came alive. The cries of her sister, the chanting of her family, the terror that had gripped her own child mind. It was overwhelming, yet she welcomed it. Each memory was a spark igniting the shadows, animating the spirits she had already begun to sense. Outside, the compound trembled. Ayabo's prayers became frantic. Obina whimpered and fell to the ground, and Ikin's face was pale as moonlight. The house itself seemed to respond to Nadia's memories. Doors slammed. Pots shattered. Shadows moved like living beings, curling around the guilty, refusing to release them. Then came the final memory, the full truth of that night. Nadia remembered everything, the laughter turning to screams, her sister's desperate struggle, the family's panic as they realized what they had done. She remembered the ritual, every incantation, every secret hiding place. She remembered her own mind being tampered with, the fragments stolen, hidden deep to weaken her, and the deliberate erasure of her sister's presence. Her chest tightened as she inhaled the weight of it all. The spirits that her memories had awakened now gathered, swirling around her in the courtyard. They were no longer silent. They whispered the names, the lies, the betrayals. The air vibrated with their presence. A sudden calm settled over Nadia. The memories were complete now. The truth was whole. And the spirits of those memories, the echoes of her sister, the cries of injustice, the whispers of suppressed truths, stood at her side. She rose, slowly, deliberately, and let the wind carry her words. "I remember everything," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I remember the laughter, the pain, the betrayal, and the lies. I remember what you tried to erase. And now you will all face the truth you buried." The compound shuddered. Shadows reached toward the guilty family members. Every corner of the house seemed to twist unnaturally, reacting to the memories awakening. Ayabo fell to her knees, hands clutching her face. Obina's body trembled uncontrollably, while Ikin stumbled backward, gasping. And then a presence emerged from the darkness, her sister. Not a ghost, not a pale memory, but a living, radiant essence. She appeared beside Nadia, calm, resolute, her eyes filled with pride and sorrow. "You remembered," she whispered. "You carried what they tried to steal. You have reclaimed us both." Nadia felt a wave of strength course through her. She was no longer a passive vessel of stolen memories. She was their keeper, their conduit, and their guardian. The past had returned in full force, no longer silent, no longer hidden. And in that moment, the family that had tried to erase her sister, erase her, and erase the truth understood the depth of their failure. The night stretched on, filled with whispers, shadows, and the undeniable truth. The memories they had tried to bury had returned. And they would never forget them again. By dawn, the compound had become unrecognizable. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a living monument to every secret, every betrayal, every suppressed memory. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, and the air itself seemed thick with anticipation. Nadia walked slowly through the courtyard, each step deliberate, each breath steady. She no longer feared the memories, they had become her allies, her army, her justice. Her stepmother Ayabo knelt by the hearth, shaking, lips moving in frantic prayers. Obina cowered near the doorway, tears streaming freely, whispering apologies to a sister who could no longer forgive him for his silence. Ikin, once a figure of authority and control, now trembled like a frightened child, eyes wide, unable to comprehend the storm he had helped create. Nadia's lips curved into a faint, unyielding smile. She began to speak softly, almost casually, and yet every word carried the weight of truth. "I remember everything," she said. "Every act you tried to hide. Every secret you thought buried. Every night my sister disappeared from our lives, every time you tried to silence me, every lie you told yourself to justify your cruelty, I remember it all." As she spoke, the shadows stretched and writhed, coiling around the family like living chains. The air grew thick and the walls themselves seemed to echo her words. Pots rattled, doors slammed, the clay tiles of the roof shivered. Every memory she summoned manifested in the world around her, forcing the family to confront the reality they had tried so desperately to erase. She recalled the laughter of her sister, the bright, innocent joy that had once filled the courtyard. The sound emerged now as a spectral presence, circling Ayabo and Obina, taunting, reminding them of what they had destroyed. Nadia remembered the screams of the vanished girl, the terror of betrayal, the weight of confinement, and the sound pressed on the family, suffocating, inescapable. Her memories did not stop there. She summoned every whispered threat, every lie, every hushed conversation meant to control, manipulate, and erase her. The courtyard seemed to pulse with their combined force, bending reality subtly, warping the familiar surroundings into a labyrinth of truth and reckoning. Ayabo screamed, clutching her head as shadows wrapped around her shoulders, pressing down like invisible hands. Obina whimpered, trying to flee, only to trip over the roots of the mango tree, the ground itself reacting to the memories that had grown sentient. Ikin's knees buckled as he fell backward, staring at Nadia with eyes wide, not in fear of her, but in fear of the past he had tried to bury. Nadia raised her voice, letting it carry through the courtyard. "You told me to forget, you demanded I erase what happened. But forgetting is impossible. Memories are alive. They speak. They act. And they punish." The wind rose suddenly, scattering leaves and debris. Shadows merged, forming the faint silhouette of her sister, her eyes glowing softly. She reached toward Ayabo and Obina, a silent reminder of the truth they had ignored. "You tried to erase me," Nadia whispered, voice firm, controlled. "You tried to erase us. But the memories remain. And now, they are your nightmare." The family sank to the ground, trembling, helpless against the living force of truth. No words, no pleas, no prayers could undo what had been done. The memories, once confined to Nadia's mind, had become unstoppable, a spectral reckoning that exposed every hidden sin. Nadia stood, chest heaving as the shadows writhed and the air pulsed with energy. She felt her sister's presence beside her, guiding, comforting, confirming that the past, no matter how deeply buried, would always rise. And in that moment, the family who had sought to suppress, control, and destroy the truth understood the full weight of their failure. Their nightmare had only just begun. Because every memory Nadia remembered would become their reality, and there was no escape. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the village, the compound had been transformed entirely. What was once a home of silence and secrets now throbbed with the presence of the memories Nadia had reclaimed. Every shadow, every whisper, every tremor in the air testified to the truth the family had tried so desperately to bury. Nadia stood in the courtyard, eyes bright, chest steady. She no longer trembled before the ghosts of the past. They walked beside her now, not as phantoms but as allies. The laughter of her sister, the echoes of stolen nights, the whispers of unspoken betrayals, they all surrounded her, tangible and alive. She could feel the pulse of each memory in her veins, a river of truth flowing through her. Her stepmother Ayabo lay crumpled near the hearth, eyes wide, gasping for breath. Her lips moved in silent pleas, but Nadia's memory-driven presence left no space for lies or evasion. Every chant, every prayer, every desperate attempt to hide past deeds faltered under the weight of truth. Obinna, her stepbrother, shook uncontrollably, muttering apologies he had never dared to voice before. Every memory Nadia summoned struck him like a living echo, forcing him to relive the cruelty and silence he had once enabled. Her stepfather Ikin stood rigid, unable to move, staring at the shadows that danced unnaturally around him. The air around his body seemed to tighten with the weight of memories he had once tried to erase, the very walls of the compound bending to reveal the truth of his deeds. Nadia began to speak, her voice steady, commanding yet calm. You tried to erase everything. You tried to bury me, to bury her, to bury the truth. But the past does not vanish. Memories live, and they have chosen me as their keeper. The courtyard reacted instantly. Shadows coiled higher, wrapping the family in their spectral grip. The wind rose, scattering leaves, carrying whispers of every secret they had hidden. Pots rattled violently. The clay tiles of the roof trembled. Every memory she summoned manifested with power, pressing against the guilty, leaving no room for escape. Nadia recalled the small moments of joy stolen from her childhood. Laughter under the mango tree, whispered secrets with her sister, stolen games and stolen kisses of innocence. The air carried these moments like spirits, circling the guilty, reminding them of what they had destroyed. Then came the painful, searing memories, the night her sister vanished, the hidden rituals, the harsh hands, the suffocating fear, the silenced cries. Nadia spoke aloud the names, dates, and details, each word slicing through the fabric of lies and forcing the family to confront the reality of their actions. A wind gusted through the compound and her sister appeared, not as a ghost, not as a memory but as a radiant, living presence. She stood beside Nadia, eyes glowing softly, a silent guardian. Her existence confirmed the reclaimed truth. You remembered, her sister whispered, voice firm yet full of warmth. You have carried what they tried to erase. You have reclaimed us both. And now they will face what they hid. Nadia nodded, a calm fire burning in her chest. You told me to forget. But I cannot. And now, everything you tried to suppress becomes your reckoning. The family fell to the ground, helpless beneath the weight of the memories they had tried to destroy. Ayabo sobbed, Ikin's face drained of color, and Obinna shook uncontrollably. There was no escape. The memories, living and untamed, had become their nightmare. Nadia inhaled deeply, letting the morning air fill her lungs. For the first time the compound felt right. The stolen moments, the hidden truths, the forgotten bonds, they were all restored. She felt her sister's hand brush lightly against hers, and the energy of their shared memories coursed between them, binding them stronger than ever. The villagers, who had avoided her eyes for so long, began to gather at a distance, sensing the extraordinary force that now radiated from the compound. The whispers of the past, the justice of memories reclaimed, had spread beyond walls. Nadia looked at the family who had tried to erase her and her sister. There was no hatred in her gaze, only quiet strength and the inevitability of truth. They would live with what they had hidden. They would never forget the memories they had sought to destroy. And as the sun rose fully over the village, casting light on every corner of the compound, Nadia finally understood. She was no longer a victim. She was the keeper of truth, the guardian of memories and the harbinger of reckoning. The past had returned, unstoppable and unbroken. And the family that had tried to bury it would never escape it again.